Hello, I am just your average gamer. You may not know about me or my story, but it might be one you will not forget. I enjoy a vast variety of games ranging from Halo to Put saves, the Zoo, but one series that really stands out is the Castlevania series. The series is not my favorite game franchise by far, but it is one I enjoy, and I see myself accidentally starting to play constantly. My favorite of the franchise has to be Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, since it has such nostalgic value to me, and the story is fun to play. One day my original copy of the game broke at the same time of my PS2 breaking since I was playing it on my PS2. What a shame indeed. I was greatly saddened, but I didn't have anything to fear since I knew my local game store has several copies of the game and a few PS2s I can buy. Both are very cheap. I went into my store and saw all 6 copies of Symphony of the Night and picked one of them at random. Just 6 Symphony of the Nights just picked at random? Try harder. I then went to the counter and told the clerk at the counter that I also wanted to buy a PS2. He went into the back room and that had all the console systems in it and brought out the PS2. I went on home, eager to play the game. When I got back, I hooked in my PS2 to see if it worked. It started up fine and normal, but I wanted to see how well it would run games. I went and grabbed 2 of my favorite games, Breath of Fire 3 and Ratchet & Clank. They both just ran on my previous systems and I was ecstatic. I finally decided to put in Symphony of the Night. The game didn't appear to have any scratches on it, which made me feel slightly uneasy since a game this old should have had at least a few scratches and smudges on it, but there weren't any. You could have bought all 6 and tried them all. I started up the game and the title screen opened normally. When I started the prologue of the game though, the background was fully black and there was only the sound of lightning playing. A sound you would only hear later in the game. When I got to the Dracula fight as Richter, I was immediately shocked to see that the dialogue Dracula was completely different from what I remember the opening conversation to be. He said, "Please help me, set me free." Then the fight against him immediately started, except he didn't move. He just stood there and took the hits. "Hit me more, man, please." When he was eventually defeated, Dracula spoke through the sound as the game did the animation of the picture of that scene being burned. But instead of saying, "No, this cannot be," he said, "Do not give in." Next, I switched to play as Alucard. The background was black. I didn't have the sound playing, and the owls didn't fly. But it didn't play the thunder sound effect. And as he ran down the path, you saw several crucifixes in the ground, and many tombstones that all read, "Rip Fear." That began to scare me as I entered the castle, and the game reverted back to normal. Until I met Death for the first time. Instead of taking my stuff, he just said, "Your father is dead." The Belmonts have once again murdered him again. "Do you have any love for your father at all?" And he left. The game didn't have any enemies in it, except for the bosses. Because, fuck the enemies in the game. There was still no sound at all except for Alucard's grunts when he swings his weapons. But whenever Alucard was hit, his scream sounded like that of a little boy that just got hit in the gut, very forcefully. It became more realistic the more he got hit, and became more horrific sounding with every hit. Eventually, however, I made it to the Hippogriff boss. Well, instead of the Hippogriff, it was Richter. There was the dialogue too, and it said, "Why do you continue to fight against what you fear most?" After this line, Alucard spoke his words of the game, but when he did, the background image immediately changed that of the red and mural looking completely burnt black. Alucard said, his sprite no longer there, nor Richter's, and he said in a creepy, distorted voice, "Yammy." I was frightened because I knew the different definition of the word, and for a game to say this with the background this way, I became scared, but also curious as to what he meant by this. I decided to try and continue the game but it just showed a game over screen after the line of dialogue. And it showed what looked like the image of a young child, guts sliced open, intestines out all gory, and showed Alucard beside the child. It appeared that Alucard had mixed emotions, with his fist clenched, a complete grimace from ear to ear, and tears running down his face. He also didn't have the same skin tone either, because it was black as night. I restarted the console, and the game was completely normal, with none of my saves on it at all. This was a very scary experience for me. I looked behind me, and thankfully nothing was there but my kitchen. I was extremely tired after the experience, so I headed to my room and slept, but I always had 4 emotions in me at once every night afterwards. Anger, happiness, depression, and fear. This creepypasta should have stuck to using more hyperrealism, because it really turned me off to not using any hyperrealism at all, especially when it got to the slicing part of the story.